Hi, I'm John.
And I'm Katie.
And we're Patchwork Peddler. Thank you for watching Tubie Talk. We're very excited about this brand new feature that we've started.
Tubie Talk will be a series of videos, webinars, video interviews, live webcasts, web chats, and more. We hope that this will be an encouragement to all tubies and to everyone else.
Today we're going to be speaking with the Ollie Foundation's 2014 Child of the Year, Kendall Hollinger. She is an active athlete, Christian, and singer, despite being tube-fed. Among the many, Kendall has been featured in Ability Magazine, Discovery Channel, and our very own Tubie Tuesday. Alright, Kendall, can you take a few moments and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, my name's Kendall Hollinger, and I'm allergic or deathly allergic to 95% of all foods, and I have a feeding tube, a G tube, in my stomach, and that's how I get most of my nutrition, with a pump, and also I do gravity feeds, but mainly I don't really let my situation stop me from too much. I'm also a figure skater and a singer-songwriter, and I try to just do whatever I love and whatever I dream to do despite my situation. And this is my mother.
I'm Kim, I'm her mother, and it's my job to keep her safe.
Yes.
24/7.
That's a pretty big job, I'm sure, too.
Yeah.
It's a good job, though.
Good deal. And how did you discover her allergies?
Kendall was born C-section because she was breech, and on day 2 she stopped breathing because we thought it was reflux at first, but it ended up being she's allergic to my breast milk. So kind of started there, and then she was really, really sick, in and out of the hospital for the first year. Rashes, hives, vomiting, dehydration, like bloody stools. She was always covered in a rash no matter what. We just thought it was eczema. And then, and she was very asthmatic, lots of bouts of croup. And I don't know, I think around a year old is when they finally discovered it. Yeah, it was food allergies.
Because they did blood testing.
Yes. Oh, yes. She was in the hospital. She finally got to come home, and when we got her home, they called, and my husband answered, and it was basically they were listing off all her allergens, and he just said, why don't you just tell me what we can feed her? And they said, well, why don't you just bring her back? And so he's like, you need to talk to my wife. So then I had to take over. We didn't bring her back, but we did slowly learn how to manage it. I think the first diagnosis is the hardest part with food allergies, is learning how to live in it kind of like in almost like a bubble. You're keeping the child away from everything. But you make it work.
Mm-hmm. I take the bubble with me.
And what was the scariest event that's ever taken place after you found out the allergic reaction?
The first anaphylactic reaction was probably the scariest, because it was, ignorance is bliss in a lot of ways. By the grace of God, she lived through a whole bunch of stuff before we knew what was really going wrong. But I think had I known what was really wrong, I would have just been terrified all the time. But the first reaction, she was in a rental car, less than 2 miles from our house. Got her home. She asked to use the restroom. I was in the living room, and I was doing some busy work. I don't know what I was doing, but in an anaphylactic reaction, your throat swells shut, your vocal cords, everything constricts. Well, it started out, the reaction with her was first onset of stomach cramps, and then everything closed up. Well, she couldn't scream for help, and I heard a strange noise, and divine intervention, mother's intuition, I don't know, but I went running down the hallway and found her in the restroom, actually collapsed on the floor. She couldn't scream. She kind of barked like a seal a little bit. That's all the noise she could make. So they tell you how allergic reaction is supposed to look. It's not always the same. It's never the same. So they also tell you to inject first with epinephrine, an epinephrine auto-injector, and then call 911. So I first called 911, and then I hung up on them, and then I injected, and then I called. It just everything didn't go as planned, but it ended up working out okay, and the paramedics got here and took her to the hospital, and she got to come home the next day. So that was terrifying.
When it comes to Kendall's sports and keeping on top of allergens and normal everyday things, what is the biggest challenge that you have faced, Kim?
As far as the biggest challenge, it would be trying to educate people, because there's a lot of ignorance out there, and because Kendall looks so healthy and looks so normal, people don't really understand. A great piece of advice my husband always gives me on a regular basis, actually, is if she wasn't our child, we wouldn't understand. We wouldn't get it either. So he reminds me of that regularly, because when she was younger, it would just make me mad, and I would just get angry. But I've learned through the years it's better to take a step back and educate people, because the more people you educate about this disease, whether it's anaphylactic allergies or feeding tubes, whatever, the more you educate, it makes it easier for other people coming through.
And what is your daily routine like with school and things like that?
Well, I am home hospital schooled, so my mom's not my teacher because we would probably kill each other. Because we, like, even when she tries to help me with my homework, I don't know how we would do that.
Well, you know, everyone in the United States is entitled to a free and appropriate education.
Yeah.
So she says she's homeschooled. It's not typical homeschool, and it's not typical home hospital school either. The district provides teachers that come into our home every day, sometimes on the weekends, it just depends. She has what's called an IEP, an individual education plan, and it allows for her to, she has 4 different teachers right now, and they come for about 3 hours a day. So while everyone else is in school in the morning, Kendall is either on the ice or in a music lesson or something else, and then the teachers come, after they're done teaching, they then come to our house in the afternoon. And then she has school from usually anywhere from 3 to 7. It just depends on the day.
It's never
the same.
It's sort of like my schedule is kind of flip-flopped from like normal everyday teenagers, because normally you have school and then you have extracurricular activities or sports afterwards. But for me, it's kind of the opposite. I do my sports or my music and everything during the day, and then in the afternoon I have my school, which was kind of hard growing up at times, but I think it works now pretty well. I mean,
we made it work.
We made it work this far. I think we're doing okay.
One more year.
One more.
All right.
Well, let's talk about your tube for a bit. What is your Tubie care routine?
My Tubie care routine would probably be, I've always been really careful about keeping it clean. But I think a lot of people too thinks that there's like some certain way to clean it. But for me, I've always just, especially it sounds so easy because it kind of is, but whenever I take a bath or whatever, I always take soap to it and make sure that the area is clean. And I try to, growing up especially, if I would have any sort of like leakage, which I don't really get a lot of, but I know a lot of people have that problem, and it helps if you keep, like, I know a lot of people use like 2x2 type of like coverings for it, but for
split
me,
IV gauze.
it was really helpful for me actually to use Patchwork Peddler little Tubie covers, because like I love those things.
That's awesome.
They're a lot easier, especially because like my mom always says, because they clip instead of them flying off, and all of a sudden you're walking around the house and there's a 2x2 on the floor, and you're like, oh, when did that come off? Like,
or better yet, on the ice, if 2x2 falls off, it's very dangerous for another skater.
Yeah, that would be bad. But you don't worry about that with the Tubie covers, because they clip or they snap instead of having them just come off randomly. And I just like it better because, especially if I have any like soreness or irritation, like it's really soft and it feels a lot better than gauze. So I like that a lot better. But yeah, I mainly just like, I know a lot of people are really afraid of getting infections, and it is serious. Like, you don't want to get an infection, but I feel like it's probably a little bit easier with a G tube than a GJ tube, possibly because they're
just a J.
Yeah, or just a J, because they're going straight into the intestine. But it's pretty simple to keep it clean for me. I mean, knock on wood, hopefully I don't get an infection because I said that.
But I mean, that's not to say she's never had an infection.
No.
Of course she has.
Yeah.
Of course there's been, issues through the years.
Oh, I'm glad that you love our pad covers. And we
I
love
do.
making them for sure. Glad you
Yeah.
love them. That's
My
awesome.
mustache one is my favorite.
Is your favorite one? That's the one. That's what you sent us pictures of that we used for the Ollie conference. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I love that one.
Are you
Yeah, that's
wearing
awesome.
that?
Now,
Yeah.
has there ever been a time you were afraid to show off your tube and tube feeding in public? And how do you handle the nosy folks, the odd stares and things like that?
Well, okay, so when I was little, you have to kind of turn your frustration with people into like an opportunity to educate them about it, because it's harder like when a lot of times you do get the awkward stares and like the questions. And for me growing up, I always was very like not in your face about my feeding tube, but I was just like I didn't really care. I mean, to say I didn't really care, I guess, isn't true, because inside sometimes of course, you feel self-conscious as a kid, and like you think you're different because of your tube. But for the most part, my parents always kind of raised me to be very, like, to think of it as sort of like a battle scar, and like just to kind of show how tough you are, instead of thinking of it as something that makes you strange or alien-like or something like that. But
It's just a symbol of strength. We just taught her that God made her different, yes, but
yeah. And I think also, like, of course, there was times, like, my favorite comment ever to this day is when I was at a water park with one of my friends, and this little kid came up, and he's like, "Oh my goodness, you float." And I'm like, "What is he talking about?" And he's like, "But you have a blow-up valve on your stomach, like on a raft." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I just went with it because I was like, I don't want to make him sad if I don't actually float. But like it's funny. Sometimes it's really funny, some of the things, because like it does kind of look like that, and I never thought of it that way. But it's definitely hard sometimes. But I've always been better about it than like my friends. Sometimes they're a little protective, and like they'll say really funny things. Like growing up, my best friend would always tell people, she's like, "It's a feeding tube. Google it." And like that's true, but at the same time, it's all about how people ask too. Sometimes you'll get really rude people that are just sort of
we have a visitor.
say hi, Lola.
Hi, Lola.
But sometimes they'll be rude about it, and they'll be like, "That's gross" or something like that. But for the most part, people just are curious. They want to know what it is. And
I remember one time, we always raised Kendall to, just be proud of who she was. We didn't make her self-conscious. She always wore a two-piece. She's just how she always was. We were always at the lake or the beach. We live in Southern California, so just the kind of the way it was. But I remember we were at an Ollie conference, actually, our first one.
yeah.
And Kendall was out at the pool, and this was 3 years ago. And it was time for the pool picnic party. Well, Kendall prances out there in her bikini, just didn't think twice of it. And granted, the pool wasn't just Ollie people, it was a hotel, so there were people from everywhere there. And so, she's sitting on the side of the pool, and some kids, because they have, I think it's because they have brobiacs and just different reasons they can't get in the pool. But Kendall, sits down inside the pool, and she's just talking. They're all kind of talking, and most of them were like this. And Kendall's like, And so one kid who is actually a very close friend of hers now said, "Don't you care that people are staring? Doesn't that bother you?" And Kendall goes, "God made me this way." "Nope, and you shouldn't either." And so he kind of looked at her for a few minutes. She goes, "Take off your shirt. Come on already." So he did, and they went swimming. And so what was cool is, fast forward 3 years, which was just the Ollie conference in Orlando we went to, and I remember sitting out at the pool watching all of those same kids and some new ones. They're all just in the pool. Nobody cared. Nobody was self-conscious. They were so just bold, and I love that part.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is like it's not bad to feel self-conscious, because of course you do. Like it's not something that you shouldn't feel like you're bad or something because you're self-conscious of it, because everyone probably has those thoughts. I mean, I know I did at times. Like of course there's times where you're, I guess, embarrassed of it just because it does make you different or unique, but I think you just kind of have to view that as like a good thing versus a bad thing, because I mean, really there's like what, 2 billion people in the world or something, and it makes you different. So I guess you can look at it as a good thing, or you can look at it as a bad thing. I mean, it's hard sometimes. Even I like get frustrated about it because it's not fun to have people staring at you all the time, and looking at you like, what is that, and like all this curiosity. But I think I try really hard to just like look at it as a good thing, because then I can tell them about it, so that like another time they see someone else, maybe they won't be that like curious about it, and they won't like think that it's weird or different. And it's all kind of how you look at things. But I've always been really like boisterous about that, because I think that you should be able to like show your tube without being afraid of like what other people will think. And
as for the tube feeding in public,
yeah, there's always that issue too with people, because they think it's gross or something. And we've had comments before about that. And
one time, I was at a conference at the Disney Grand California Hotel.
Oh my gosh.
And it was the night before the conference started, and she was the ambassador for an organization. And we were at dinner, and the kids were at one table, doctors, and we were just all mixed in. Just pretty much any advocate was at a certain table with doctors. Just, I got stuck in a table, kind of catty corner from her, and one other person had a feeding tube there. I didn't know that they did, but they did. But most food allergic kids don't have feeding tubes. That's not like the common thing.
Okay.
So we sat down for dinner, and a woman, 1, 2, 3, 4 people away from me at the table, who happened to be the wife of a doctor that was speaking. We were all just talking about how our day was, and we were in meetings all day, but everybody else, most of the speakers were at Disneyland. That's, where we were. So she's talking about her day, how wonderful it was, except for lunch. At lunch, somebody really upset her, and I just listened. I sat back and listened, and everyone at the table, of course, this woman knows my situation with my daughter. This woman doesn't know who I am, and silly her didn't educate herself to find out who she was sitting with. But she went on to talk about how her lunch was just ruined because some mom started tube feeding her child right there outside at the restaurant. And she said, how badly does someone need attention to tube feed their kid in public? And I sat there, and I had someone with their hand on my leg under the table. I let her go. I just let her go. And I just wanted to see where she was coming from, because something I've learned as I get older is I really try to look at where someone is coming from before I jump.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I just would have jumped across the table and told her how it was. So I just let her go. And so finally, I didn't tell her who I was. And I just said, so what about that offends you? And she just said, I said, that's the way they eat. Why does that upset you? I said, it's not gross. There's nothing messy or smelly. That's just how they eat. And she said, well, they could have done it somewhere else. How much attention does one person need? And I said, Kendall's my daughter. And she said, who's Kendall? And I said, the U.S. figure skater that's the ambassador? And she said, yeah, I know she is. Oh, man, she's amazing with her allergies. I go, and she has a feeding tube. And she said, oh, yeah, but that's different. And I said, no, it's not. I said, actually, Kendall goes around and she speaks at different things because she wants people with feeding tubes and different, disabilities to be proud of who they are. Mm-hmm. And I said, and that woman was probably feeding her child because their sugar had dropped or they had dumping syndrome and they had that moment to feed. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I'm a nurse. And I said, then you should know that these kids, when they need food, they need food. It doesn't, you don't have time to go somewhere else. And I said, and there's nothing gross about it. They should be able to sit at a meal just like we do. That's their meal. And she just sat there, and I had 2 hands on each leg at this point. 2 advocates sitting next to me. And so I kind of sat there for a few minutes, and she was trying to justify. Instead of apologizing, she was justifying. And so her husband walked in. He had been going to get a bottle of wine. He had walked in. He didn't hear any of this, of course. He walked in and sat down, and you could see her son, telling him. And I just kind of sat there and smiled and was like, okay. And a woman that was 3 people next to her, but 3 people over from me said, Kim, I'm glad you just said that. She goes, my son's sitting over at that table right there. He's got a feeding tube. Nobody knows it. None of his friends know it. Nobody. I said, I'm so sorry. I said, how long has he had it? And she said, for a long time. He's just ashamed. He's embarrassed. He, changes in the bathroom instead of the locker room. And I said, I'm so sorry. He goes, well, would Kendall be willing to sit and talk with him and stuff? I go, I think just by being around her, he's going to get it that it's nothing to be ashamed of, And so that was very challenging for me to behave myself. But I did, but it made me realize that that's the view of a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be nice people. And there's always going to be people who are really opinionated. There's always just going to be different types of people in the world. And I think there eventually will be a point and a part of every type of medical disorder where we will be able to just educate them all. But some people are definitely harder than others.
But as far as tube feeding in public,
that's okay. Like, honestly, it's not something to be ashamed of.
I kind of, actually, at this point in life, I kind of gauge how comfortable people are with Kendall and her situation by how they react. Yeah. Some people, I remember we were at a worship team meeting in the morning before they were singing, because she's a worship leader at church. And I was tube feeding her, I was gravity feeding her while they were all talking. Mm-hmm. Not one person took a second look. That was just normal to them. Mm-hmm. And they haven't even known her that long. That was just okay. Mm-hmm. But then we've also had onlookers at different times where,
for instance, when I was at my very first dance, I went with my best friend. We went together as friends, and she,
teens can be so cruel.
She, my best friend is very protective of me, so of course she wasn't with me at this point. My blood sugar dropped during the dance, and I knew I needed to get formula in me, so I called my mom, and luckily the dance was only a couple blocks away from my house, and my mom drove down.
It was a few miles. I've never driven so fast in my life.
Yeah, but I know that she was rushing down. I tried to be as calm as possible.
Now we see Lola.
Oh, look, Mom, look.
There you go.
I got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Teamwork.
What were we talking about?
I have no idea.
Oh, the dance. Yeah, that.
Okay, where do we lose off?
Yeah.
You're at the dance, and you were rushing down at the dance while she was waiting calmly.
Yes. I took her upstairs to a restroom, and she just there was a chair in the bathroom, so she sat down, and she's in a dress, and so how do you gravity feed? You have to go somewhere, So I'm trying to do this, and my hands were shaking because, when you get that phone call, I never know what
trailing front.
So, and it's been really hard as she grows up to give her little bits of freedoms, like that. So we started to tube feed her, and in comes a group of girls from the dance. And this is a public school. She doesn't go to it.
It was all I could do not to jump up out of my chair and squirt them with my gravity feed. It was so rude.
Actually, what the words were, I won't repeat what they said, but basically is, what the blank is that? That is so disgusting.
Wow.
And what a freak. And I just sat there. My back was to them. And of course, as a parent, blood is boiling.
Yeah.
I just kind of put my head down and went, she can handle this on her own. She can handle this on her own. And she's like, it's all right, Mom. It's all right, Mom.
I just didn't want her to lunge across. I was trying not to myself, but I just kind of kept my mouth shut. And then later on, a couple of my actual friends walked in. And they were just like, oh no, are you okay? Is everything fine? And they didn't take a second look. So that for me, instead of looking at it as wow, girls can be mean, I just try to look at it as okay, yes, there is that awfulness in the world, but there's also this big group of people that just rushed in that don't even take a second look at it. So it's there's gonna be people who don't really care what they say and can be a little.
They have no filter.
Yeah. Gotcha.
We'll say about them. Basically, that was only a learning lesson because I was don't go off on them. That's not gonna help anything. Just breathe.
What advice could? Sorry.
It's okay. What?
What advice could you give new tubies who are less than thrilled with the new look of their tube?
I guess the advice I would give them is just sort of what my mom and dad always told me, it is definitely different and it makes you unique, but don't be ashamed of it because it is sort of like a battle scar. Like it's something that shows like how strong you are and how brave you are, and like as much as it is something to kind of be embarrassed of, it's also something to be proud of because like it shows like, hey, I've got this to deal with and like I don't let it bother me. Like I just keep going, and like that's a really like respectable way to like carry yourself. And I know a lot of my friends who inspire me like daily who have all not just one feeding tube but like two and like a central line and a Broviac, and they have everything and like they carry themselves that way, and that's really inspiring for me. And like I've gotten advice from them too because I feel like sometimes whenever I get like self-conscious about mine or anything going on in my life, like their positivity and their attitude about things definitely like keeps me like level-headed, and like it's helped me a lot. So I guess that would be my advice is just like don't let it stop you from doing anything because you're embarrassed of it. Or
And also that someone who's new to it, they have to remember that the newness, those are the hard times. When you first get a feeding tube and it's first surgically placed, or whether it's done radiologically or surgically, I'd say the first 3-4 months, it's hard. Your body's fighting it. You're going through a lot of granulation tissue and adjustments and muscles, and everything's growing back together. And that's the hard time, and it's not going to stay that way.
no.
It gets to the point where it's just a part of you, and it's not a big deal after that. But yeah, I mean, I never want anyone to think going into it that it's easy. Day 2, day 3, they're very painful.
Yeah.
But you get through it, and then you end up having a normal life, and you have the nutrition you need, and you feel better.
Kim, what kind of diet is Kendall on, and what precautions do you take to be sure that there are no allergens in Kendall's food or in her surroundings?
As far as her diet goes, Kendall, she's on Peptamen Prebio. That's her formula that she gets through her G-tube. She has a Mickey button, so sometimes she gravity feeds, and other times she's on a pump. Lately, she's been mostly pumped because she's had a little setback in her health, but
I thought I would be annoyed like I was when I was little with having the pump on, but I kind of liked it because you have so much energy and you just feel better. That I like having my pump on better, honestly, lately, because it just makes you feel better, and that's worth it.
As far as for allergens and like what we do different is our house is a safe zone. We don't have anything like any nuts or tree nuts or peanuts or eggs or in our house. We keep it safe so she can relax here. When going in public, we bring her food with us. There's a couple of places that she is able to eat at, and they're like a vacation for me. It's really nice. At the South Point Hotel in Las Vegas, they cook for her safely. And then recently we went to an Italian restaurant that was able to cook for her some wheat-free noodles, and it turned out amazing. But we don't typically do that because it's risking her life. I'm putting her life in someone else's hands. So, yeah. So pretty much she brings her food with her everywhere. Or if she's not eating, it's she's got a feeding pump on. But that's pretty much how you keep her safe. And what we've taught her is, when in doubt, leave it out. If you don't know, you don't know. So you don't even try.
Yeah, I mean, it's not worth it. Like a lot of times, people when they're first diagnosed are kind of in denial of their food allergies, and I know that that's got to be hard. I was born with it, so for me there was never really a denial period, but like I've watched people when they're first diagnosed, and it's hard because you go from living totally normal to like, I can't have this anymore. And I think that it's really important when you're in that denial period, like, don't risk your life for food. Like, it's not worth it. If you even question it, just eat something that you know is safe. It might not be as tasty, but I mean, it's better to be safe than sorry in every case. And it's just better to like take logical risks instead of like doing something crazy like eating something when you know it's probably not
calculated
safe. Yeah, you have to take calculated risk. Like if you're gonna try something that you know that you're not allergic to, you've just never tried it before, that's okay. But like if you're gonna try something that you know you're allergic to,
Just don't do it.
Yeah, that's not smart.
Gotcha. You're very passionate about by everything, really. You seem passionate about advocacy and ice skating, and see you singing as well, and really helping others. And that's really awesome to do with a feeding tube. What drives your passion? What fuels that for you?
Definitely my faith, because there's harder times in life where it's been hard for me, and like I haven't, like I'm not always passionate. Sometimes I'm just grumpy about it because I think everyone is. Like when you have something that's different or any kind of medical illness, like it's definitely hard. And there were times where I wanted to just give up, like, and just throw in the towel because like it just gets so annoying sometimes. But I think I also like not just my own faith, but like the faith of other people I know, like my parents, and just like the courage of a lot of other special needs kids that I know has definitely helped a lot, because I've growing up known a lot of like really incredible people that have just like given me really good views on life. Some kids that I know who can't eat anything, and like they act like it's nothing, like they just
and they go to dinner and they sit at the dinner table with their families and they don't complain.
Yeah, and like for me, I'm like, okay, so I can eat some stuff. Like, why would I complain? Like, it's sort of like I really look up to those people, and I definitely like try to better myself on that every day. Because if I'll start to complain, I'm like, no, shut up. Like, it could be worse. Like, you need to be happy about this. But yeah, I mean, it's a process. Like, you're not gonna just get a feeding tube and always be positive about it. Like there's gonna be times where you're frustrated, and that's okay. Like it is hard sometimes. Sometimes it's okay to just be like, this sucks and I'm mad. Like it's okay to like be sad about it sometimes, but you just like you don't ever want to like get into like a spot where you're constantly like feeling sorry for yourself about it, or just because you're lucky like to be alive. Like that's the bottom line that I always remind myself, is like I've had a lot of close calls, and like I'm still here, so like that's always a sunny side of things.
That is good.
Yeah, I think that's you just gotta remind yourself like, okay, you're breathing, you're still here, it's all good.
As a mom, I'm sure that you want Kendall to do everything that she's passionate about, the things that she likes, the things that her friends are doing, and sometimes you just have to say no. And I'm sure that leads to a lot of, well, is it really that bad? Could we make it safe for her? Could we maybe alter something so that she can enjoy these things? Where do you draw the line? How do you determine whether you are really doing something that's really in her best interest? As a mom, it's hard to second guess, not to second guess yourself. Where do you draw the line?
I think there's such a gray area in living with a disease like this. I try to make everything possible. I mean, obviously she's not going to go to a baseball game. There's no way of keeping peanuts away from her. Like as far as concerts, I mean, Kendall loves music. That's her thing. And we made a concert happen because we bought floor seats. Not everyone can afford that. We quite frankly can't either anymore, but we try everything to make it happen. But recently there was a concert she wanted to go to, a friend had called, and the venue wasn't safe. And I couldn't make it happen. There's nothing I could do. And she fought hard. She did. She really fought hard. I'll wear gloves. I'll wear a mask. I'll do. But bottom line is it was such a risk for her life. Is it really worth it? I don't want to go to my child's funeral. That's kind of where that line is.
Right.
And we try to reason with her. We've always, parented that way with, she's always been so super smart, even since she was really tiny. And I think it's because we have handled things that way. But she understood. She was pretty mad at first, and then she realized the next day. That night I was sitting with my husband, just kind of just feeling bad, feeling terrible that, I did have to say no. There are those things that she's just not going to get to do.
You gotta draw the line sometimes and just yeah.
There's times where like I want to get frustrated like with my parents, but it's like I've learned to understand that like it's not like they're just being mean and they don't want me to do things. They're trying to protect me. me, and I have to learn how to like understand that so I can protect myself, because I can't just do everything. Like there's just some things that aren't safe. Like I've actually purposely never gotten into baseball so that I wouldn't like really want to go to a baseball game and not be able to. I'll just like, oh, watch it on TV. But I've accepted certain things like big stadiums. They're just not a good idea for me. And if I am going to go to them, I need to take precautions, like be inside some sort of safe area or wear my mask, wear my gloves. And that particular concert that I wanted to go to, like at first I'm angry because I'm like, how can I make this happen? But eventually, like you, as a kid with food allergies, you just have to understand like how to like eventually like don't be so angry, like accept it, because it's not anyone's fault, and there's gonna be other concerts. Like it's not like you can never go to one. It's just that particular time, like it's just not meant to be, and you don't want to risk it. I mean, it might be amazing music, but like it's not your life. Like you don't want to risk your life.
Pretty much. I mean, you have to be a parent sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you do. Now, with some of the doctors and physicians, with our customers, we run across a lot of people who the doctor says you can't do this, you can't do that. You got to live in a bubble. You can't. Basically, customers are even now wanting to get out of their room or their house. How did some of the physicians, nurses, and the medical professionals, I guess you say, handle your ice skating and wakeboarding and things that you do? How do they do that, and what kind of advice do you get from them? Do they support you, or are they against you on that?
In the beginning, they were kind of against it. They never really told me no, which I kind of used to my advantage. But they won't, like, unless it's something crazy, like I'm gonna go like sliding across my stomach in the desert or something crazy. Like I don't really know why you would do that, but if I was gonna do that, of course they would say no. But most of the time they're trying to like logically tell me like, well, I mean, that's very risky, and it's probably better just to like stay home or do something like, I don't know what they expect you to do, like sit around and knit or something. Like they don't want you to go outside. It's like they're trying to tell you to like stay.
But we've been fortunate and really actually blessed with a team of doctors that want what's best for Kendall.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
They're not trying to protect themselves. I feel like you go into an ER setting as a person with a feeding tube or any out of the norm, they don't know what they're doing. You're trying to train them, so we try to avoid that because everything's going to be a no at that point.
Right.
But her doctors know her situation. As far as skating goes,
they're pretty supportive.
I think only one time in how many years? 12 years she's been skating, has she fallen on her stomach.
Gotcha.
Usually a skater falls to the side, but and even that, I don't feel, and I'm not a doctor, so I'll say that right now. Hitting your stomach with the G-tube, it's not going to damage anything. I just feel like everyone is so protective of that.
It also depends. Like, okay, if you're doing something that, if you hit it straight on, if you hit your stomach straight on, it doesn't really hurt anything. But if you're doing something that's gonna slide across it, like when I was little, for a while I went through this phase where I wanted to be a gymnast. Like going on the bars would be really hard, sliding across your stomach, because that
uneven bars, that was a problem.
The uneven bars, like something like that, I mean, that kind of stuff is going to move your tube sideways, which could pull it out, and that's painful. But if it's like just hitting it straight on, like I've never fallen really on my tube that I can remember. One time, because for the most part you fall on your hip or your knee when you're on the ice, but it can happen. Anything can happen though. Like when I was little and I got the butterfly Barbie doll, and
my gosh,
it accidentally connected to my feeding tube.
In ICU, in
Oh,
intensive
no.
care. You know the butterfly Barbie where the thing slides across the fish line? She's in intensive care. She wants the stinking Barbie. Her grandma buys it for her. We hook the thing up and she's playing with it, and it hooks the G-tube.
Oh, no.
I mean, of all places for the thing to hook onto, it was not good. What could happen?
I don't even know how I did it. I just be like, Mommy, it's trying to pull my tube out, and she's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. I've said in on different focus groups and stuff for feeding tubes, and maybe we're just different. I don't know, because she does everything.
I hear a lot too. One of the things that's only happened to me once, and it was because of a defective tube. A lot of people are so afraid of their balloon popping, and I'm sure it's different with I mean, for a G tube, it's really hard to pop your balloon unless the like maybe it's something with the stomach acid that's like breaking down the material. I have no idea, but that's never happened to me.
One time in all these years, she's had her tube since she was 4.5. It's happened once, and it's one of those deals where mommy, it's loose, and she's in a car seat. Mommy, it's loose. Never, Kendall. Mommy,
So
it's loose.
you don't really worry about the sand, the beach, and
Oh my gosh.
So you don't really worry about the sand, beach, and pools that most people tell you to be afraid of and stay away from, and that kind of thing, right?
Well, no, not pools, because there's chlorine. The water's clean. I wouldn't let her get in like a pond or anything disgusting. And the lakes we go to, it's all fresh water. The beach, she's boogie board. She's learning to surf.
Are there any activities or sports that you completely avoid for sure?
I want it for a while. I did kind of want to play when I was little, but that was just kind of a phase that died off, so I never really did it. But one of the things that my mom and dad were really worried about is like, obviously soccer is very physical. You get bumped a lot, and like.
Well, and that was before anyone had Tubie belts and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Before all that, so we worried about that. I think that I can't think of anything that would be a no.
I wouldn't really do gymnastics because of the bars.
That would be it, though.
But I mean, I guess you could work it, like if you had one of those Tubie belts.
Oh, that makes me hurt thinking of it, though.
I mean, there's always ways to No.
This is true.
Kendall, congratulations on winning the Ollie Child of the Year. That's awesome. How has Ollie helped you?
Oh, in a lot of ways. Ollie, my mom and dad found out about Ollie before I did when I was really little. And I know they helped my mom and dad a lot growing up with me, like getting information from them, because
there's not a lot of information out there.
Yeah. And for me, they just helped in the fact that once I got involved with them, it was really, really cool the way that they connect the families together that have this condition and have feeding tubes. Because for me, I had never really met anyone else before that had a feeding tube. I've met a lot of kids with food allergies, but before I went to Ollie conferences, I hadn't met families or kids who really had tubes that were anything like me. And so when I finally got to, it was just like this amazing thing, because it's like, wow, like they do exactly the same thing I do. Like they're dealing with all these little things that most people don't think of, and they're handling it. And
you get a lot of ideas from each other too.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's a cool part about it.
That's one of my favorite things about Ollie is their conference, because you get to like go and like see all those people that like live like you, and it's like you feel normal, I guess. Like, you feel a little less different when you're all together living with the same, different conditions, of course, but the same type of understanding of diseases and medical illness.
I think with Ollie also is it gives the kids, the little ones are always together all day long. Mm-hmm. The parents are obviously in meetings, but the little ones are all together and they're always doing activities. And the teens, they're supposed to be doing certain things, but really what they're doing is being normal teens, running through the hotel, playing ding dong ditch 'em on hotel room doors.
We did not.
Running through the hotel lobby at 3 a.m. saying the British are coming.
No, I got tricked.
They're just being normal teens, whereas because of their medical conditions, they've never they don't have sleepovers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing.
One of my favorite, my good friends, she has feeding, also a lot of other. She has mitochondrial disease. So she has a lot of medical things that she deals with, but it's really funny, like, ever getting together with her. It's like the things that most teenage girls deal with are kind of trivial to us, I guess, because we deal with these other things that are like life or death. And it's like we kind of joke around because the things that are like so serious, like, oh my goodness, he dumped me, or like the stupid things, like it's funny because like to us those things are kind of like they're not life or death because like we go through life or death stuff, but I mean.
And you met somebody, you got a special somebody you met at Ollie recently?
What? Yes.
Oh, she just turned red.
Oops, I don't know. But yes, that's another wonderful thing about like connecting with people is like normal people annoy me because they don't understand like what I'm going through as much, and it's better like when you like, especially when it comes to like dating and that kind of stuff. I've always like I don't do that stuff because it's annoying with my situation because people don't get
as
it.
parents especially, it's very frustrating because we can really tell when someone gets the situation or doesn't get the situation.
Yeah.
And a lot of people look at you straight in the face and they get the situation. They don't get the situation, and they're just telling you what you want to hear. But you pretty much learn to gauge those situations. And I remember one boy in particular, and I knew he didn't get it. Knew for sure. So we took the kids down to Seal Beach, and my husband and I were walking around down Main Street, and they walked in. He wanted to get an ice cream. You don't get ice cream with someone who's allergic. You just don't do it. Well, I'll get something you're not allergic to. Kendall's like, and she didn't really speak up for herself, and we were somewhere else.
Because I thought he understood it.
Well,
and I was like, no,
he came out with
like this thing, this like Sunday thing, and it had like 3 different Reese's cups on top, and I just kind of looked at him, and he was like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot. And so instead of like throwing the whole ice cream away though, he picked like the peanut butter cup off the top
with his hand.
And I'm like, no. And like, I feel bad because like, it's not like he was being like intentionally rude or anything. He just didn't get it.
But that's the thing. I mean,
but it's like,
the whole dating thing.
I'm not gonna get near you if you don't get it, because like, that's my life. Like,
well, the whole thing about dating too, especially for a food allergy parent, you worry about. I mean, obviously we've raised her in a Christian home where her values are not the world's values. It's very different. And so, but you do worry about, okay, like the first kiss. The first kiss could kill her.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, I think I kind of got lucky that way, though.
You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I think we did get very lucky with that.
Well, John is going to continue without me, if that's okay. I've got to go tend to the little baby. So it was awesome getting to talk to you all, and
yeah, nice to meet you.
You too. I hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah,
definitely.
All right.
Good idea with your products. I really like them.
Oh, nice. Thank you. I love making them. We both do.
Awesome. Yeah, that's the joy of being, my wife and I do everything that we have here. We do it all. So that includes tending to the kids and taking care of the house and the business all at one time. And it's a blessing. We're really blessed to be able to do what we do. And God's really placed a burden on our heart for what we do, and we just we love it. So every customer we get that gets a smile, we get a bigger smile. So it is awesome for sure. Now I can hear, was that Lola in the background? The jingles?
Yes.
Yeah. And she's a new companion you've had recently. And how's she? How was that? Oh, you bringing it over? How she helped you with your peanut allergies, and how did you get a peanut dog?
Well, Lola, she is my peanut detection dog, so she is trained, professionally trained from Falco Academy, which is like a police academy sort of for dogs in Brea in California, and they trained Lola so that whenever I'm around something and I'm not really sure, I got her specifically for college, so when I'm going into a school setting and I don't know what is on the things that I'm touching, like my school desk or the chair I'm sitting in, I got Lola so that she can search the area. So she basically sniffs for peanuts, and if she senses or not senses, if she smells peanut residue, she alerts me by sitting and putting her nose to it, and then like looking at me and then putting her nose to it, sort of like she's pointing.
Gotcha.
And
Her nose.
yes, with her nose, and that's her job. So basically, we got Lola. She was only 2 weeks old. She was a rescue because ASPCA found these dogs in this shed that were starving
In a crack house in Compton.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
that's actually where they found them. But so Lola has had a very sketchy past. It's really sad. But we saved her.
She hit the lottery when she got here.
About how we saved Lola, but really Lola, now it's her job to save me. So it's really funny how things turn around. But basically we were the foster family for Lola and her little sister Gracie, and we took 2 puppies and supposed to foster them, but we failed, and we kept Lola, and then Lola's sister Gracie went to my cousin. So we're not very good at the whole fostering thing because we fell in love with her, but we weren't supposed to keep her either because my parents and all of us, obviously I'm allergic to certain types of dogs.
Most dogs.
And most dogs, and especially cats, and really most animals, and so we're not, like, for the most part, we only have 2 Chihuahua mixed dogs because they have like hair instead of fur, and it's a little easier. They're considered hypoallergenic.
They're also miniature. They weigh 5 pounds
Yeah,
each.
they're
Gotcha.
tiny. We never expected to get a big dog at all, but when I fell in love with Lola, and the crazy part about it is that I don't react to her, and that was really rare because most big dogs, pretty much all big dogs, like I react to, I get itchy, I break out in hives, the typical
Asthma
sort of
attacks.
outdoor allergy type syndrome.
That's
but
how she worked us, though, as parents, because we didn't want to keep the dog. But we always wanted her to have a service dog, and she didn't want to be the kid with the food allergies and the feeding tube and the dog. So we kind
Gotcha.
of respected that. So when Lola came around, I think she realized the only way she was going to keep this dog is if it was a service dog. So we started out with one trainer who turned out to not be very honest. She was basically just telling us whatever she thought we needed to hear, and just wasting our time, wasting our dog's time, valuable time in training she was wasting. And she just was very dishonest, and somehow I finally figured it out the hard way. And then we set up an appointment. I got online and started researching, because the only other places I knew of that did peanut dogs, first of all, charged a little more than double what we paid for Lola's training. But they were all out of state. One's in Texas, and the other one, the really well-known one, is in Colorado. And I happened to find this police academy that trains, or a dog that trains police academy dogs. Called, a woman answered, and they happened to have an opening that day for an evaluation. So we ran with Lola over there. It's about 20 miles away from our house, not that bad. And for her first evaluation didn't go very well. He didn't think that she could be any sort of detection dog. We really thought she was pretty dumb at first. That's the truth. And so we set up some obedience for her because she was not obedient at all. She was very naughty, very unruly. And then the day after that, we set up another obedience class for her, a private obedience, because we'd been kicked out of our first obedience classes at the other place because Lola was such a naughty dog. Come here, Lola.
Come on.
Let's see. Up. Come on. Up. You're allowed up. You're allowed up. Turn around.
Say hi, Lola.
Yes, down.
Look at there. Hi, Lola.
This way, Lola, not me.
Look over here. I mean, where's that coming from? Hi. There you go. Hi, Lola.
Where is that?
That's
I'm gonna look
Is
under
that
the too.
So a couple weeks went by, and Kendall was pretty bummed because her evaluation didn't go well. So the owner, Andy Falco, he was very honest with us and just said, you know,
Awesome.
she's not gonna cut it. You know, you would be wasting your time and your money. And of course, Kendall being Kendall still said Lola was gonna do it. And a couple weeks went by, and we received a phone call from them, and he just said his wife reminded him of a couple dogs that he said were never going to make it, ended up being the best detection dogs. So he made a deal with Kendall and said for the same amount he would train Lola, And if Lola couldn't get through the program and she just couldn't cut it, he would choose another dog that was actually bred to do such things and train it at the same price. And of course, Kendall was still saying, nope, it's going to be Lola. There will be no other dog. And the training process was difficult. It was slow, and it was hard having to leave her and have her be away. But most of the training was for us. Because,
Gotcha.
we're not very disciplined dog owner people.
And it sounds like Falco, the Falco Academy you're talking about, did a really good job with Lola, because the National Geographic ended up doing.
Yeah.
I mean, they got interested to come down and do a test on Lola. How did that go?
It went great. They tested Lola in every way that they possibly could. In a lot of ways, we sort of looked at it as like it was almost setting her up to fail, because in a lot of ways, we didn't know she'd even be able to do what they were asking her to do, but she surprised all of us with her abilities. And it's funny because they have been calling her the miracle dog, but it really is kind of crazy how good she is at what she does, because she wasn't bred for it like most dogs are. And she's what I love about Lola is that when she has her vest on, she's little Miss Pris and does her job, but when she does not have her vest on, she's kind of a party animal. She just wants to be crazy and like run around. And
well, she's still a puppy. She's only 18 months old still. She's still young. But the first day of filming, they put her through every test you could possibly imagine. Bearing peanut butter sandwich, tuna fish sandwich, and I think a cheese sandwich, and she had to find the peanut sandwich. And then they put apple slices with cream cheese, peanut butter, and I forget what the other one was, and different cars at a car dealership, and Lola had to find that. And then
basically they put for 25 plates the biggest.
No, that was the next day of filming. But the first day of filming was just testing the whole time, and basically they went as far as taking croutons, raisins, carrot, and a peanut, and they burned them to ash. And Lola had to find the peanut.
Wow.
And she did it. And it things that I didn't think she was capable of doing at all. What we've learned though through the process is Lola is really, really good at what she does for Andy Falco.
Gotcha.
He trained her. Granted, he's had 30 years experience with dogs. He is a professional. Kendall calls him a dog whisperer. He was wonderful with her. And still to this day, when we show up, she's the most obedient dog you'll ever see when he's around. And that's our fault, because we don't handle exactly the same way he does. We try. We're learning. We're getting there. But, so then the second day of filming came around, and we had to go out of town for that and stay, I don't know, about an hour and a half away. And that day was the filming setup was very controlled, because it is National Geographic. And they took 25 plates, and they put peanut butter on one of the plates, and they marked an X on the bottom of it. And Lola went up against a pressure washer, a vortex pressure washer, which is the most powerful one on the market. And I really didn't think she could do it. Honestly, I thought we were being set up for failure. That's the truth. And so there were 25 plates. There were 5 rows of plates, and 5 on each, and each equally spaced, same color, same everything identical, with the exception of the one having an X on the bottom. Each plate was pressure washed for, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds. But the peanut plate, we heard the pressure washer go on because our backs were turned. We were in a holding area.
Okay.
We couldn't see anything. We heard the pressure washer go on, and I'm not exaggerating. It went on for like 5 minutes.
Yeah,
wow.
They washed that one really nicely.
So, and at that point, when they were bringing the plates out, they again strategically placed everything to where you knew nothing. That way, there could be no cheating.
Gotcha.
We didn't know what plate it was.
We didn't know what row, what plate. We knew nothing. And especially with Kendall, we had to put her in another area altogether because of the allergy situation. We don't want to put her life at risk. Anyway, so when it came time for Lola to find the plate, I really, Kendall the whole time, she's going to find it. Same with Andy. They were both like, she's got this. And I'm thinking, there's no way she's got this. But she found it. She did really well. At one point, which the show doesn't show,
That's my
She
favorite.
got frustrated because they made her search twice. And the second pass that, when she alerted, you could tell she was frustrated because the trainer was saying, her handler was saying, it's one of these two
Because
plates.
she alerted in between two plates, because that's where she was catching the scent.
And so he goes, it's one of these two plates. And before he could finish what he was saying, she jumped up and put both paws on each side of the plate and just looked up at him.
This one.
Yeah, and they don't show that on the show, but that was the most amazing part. It was so cool.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah, but she won. She was very victorious. They call her Miracle Dog.
That's awesome. It sounds like everything just works. God's really working everything together for you guys, and that's great.
Yes, definitely. We just have to trust him. It's his plan, not ours.
That's right. That's right. That's what we feel too. And one of the most inspirational verses for me is 1 Corinthians 10:13. And what advice do you guys have? What inspiration can you give, or verses do you have that you would like to pass on to other tubies?
Well, it's funny because growing up, like my mom and dad,
Lola,
one of the
stop.
one of the things.
Let me push her
that-
down. Really
Yeah,
quick.
she needs to go down because she's being naughty. She's like, no. Oh, okay. Apparently, she wants you to hold her.
Okay. I get to hold- Sorry.
She needs a hug.
But basically, like my favorite Bible verse has always been Philippians 4:13. You can do all things through Christ who gives you strength. Because growing up, my mom would always give me that verse and tell me to look at that verse because, like, there were times with my situation where I just didn't believe that, like, I could do things and that, like, I could get through things. But, like, it's before every ice skating competition, before every time I go on stage, I always, like, would kind of whisper that verse to myself because it.
Actually, we have a handshake before she skates.
Yeah.
Every time. And it's I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. What do I have the fear when the Lord is here? And all things come to me through God's filter.
Yeah.
And it's something we just say to each other together, and then we smack hands, and then she goes. It's something that's always been
awesome.
said since she was tiny. But she used to actually, on one of her skates, it was hand painted with a seahorse on the bottom, and it had Philippians 4:13 underneath the skate.
That's pretty awesome.
My favorite, also one of my favorite sayings is, I believe it's by Theodore Roosevelt, but I'm not positively sure who it's from because I just found it on this little quotes book. But it says, like, when you reach the end of your rope, tie a knot and hang on, because I always think of that because sometimes, especially when you have a medical illness, you just feel like you are over it. Like, you've just kind of reached the end of your rope, you're through with everything. And I sort of believe in, like, my little saying that's on my bedroom walls and everything that I've always said is to believe fearlessly, because I'm a big Taylor Swift fan, and one of her albums was called Fearless, and inside of it she said, being fearless isn't living with the absence of fear, it's having lots of fears but living in spite of them, and that makes you fearless. And so I always kind of think, like, it's not that you're not going to be afraid of things. Even the Bible says that you're going to be afraid of things, but it says, like, not to fear and just sort of go in spite of the fear, because that, of course, I'm afraid of having a reaction, and of course, having my tube, I'm afraid, like, something's going to happen with it, or I'm going to have another surgery or some crazy thing. But, I mean, it's sort of like you kind of learn to live with it, and you kind of have to not ignore it, because you can't ignore the fact that you have a medical illness. It's always there, but you kind of learn to kind of put it aside and kind of, like, focus on other brighter, happier things, and you can kind of make happy things. Like, I think your guys' product is really cool because it's kind of like making, like, a little happy place within your situation, because it's like, I can decorate my tube now. And it's like, I love that. Like, I always used to tell, like, people who make feeding tubes, I'm like, you should make them have colors and, like, polka dots, and, like, you should, like, it's so
Well, then
cool.
someone came out with a tube that glows in the dark, and she goes, I don't want one that glows in the dark. She goes, it's going to show through my shirts and stuff. I'm like, we don't want that.
If you're, like, in the middle of the night and, like, you can't see your tube or something, your line.
I don't think I would like that.
Yeah, I think my like, you never know.
You never
Something
know.
we've always taught Kendall growing up is from a very, very tiny age, was that you're not blind, you're not deaf, you're not crippled, you don't have cancer. It's food. Just move on. You know, it could be so much worse than it is. This isn't, you know, yes, it is a disability and it's frustrating, but you have to make the best of it. And she's, you know, we've kind of raised her like almost programming her that way in a lot of ways. And, you know, there's going to be bad days, of course, and we let her feel those bad days and get through them and move on.
I've known people too that don't really agree with that mentality, I guess, because they think like, oh yeah, it could be cancer, but like my situation is just as hard. And of course,
it is,
every person's situation is a struggle for them, and I don't discount that at all. Of course it's hard. Like, I'm not saying it's easy at all. It's just that I think that if you think that way, if you always think of it could be worse, it helps you kind of stay in like the right
coping mechanism.
Yeah, it is kind of a coping mechanism because you're making yourself think positive, and just thinking positive helps a lot when you have a situation like that, because it's sort of your lifeline to like continue going on and on and on, because of course there's always going to be bumps in the road, like when you eat red licorice and you think that you're bleeding out of your G tube, or like really stupid things.
And you rush to the ER.
Oh yes, little things like that.
Oh my!
The most embarrassing ones, I think.
Now, what kind of advice could you give other tubies to raise awareness? You know, because I feel awareness does matter. It's a huge thing. You don't run into as many people who are so ignorant about things. And, you know, you never know. There's the next person might have that gift or might have that idea where it's like, man, it'll change the tubie world. It'll change that thing. So awareness is a huge thing. What would you recommend for other tubies to do to raise awareness? Because you yourself are very busy raising awareness. What could others do?
I would say, like, just be very, I mean, not as much vocal, but maybe, like, I guess you don't realize that, like, a lot of people think that you have to be like a public figure or a celebrity to like be vocal about things and like bring it to the world, but honestly you don't. Like, just going to school, the people around you, or at your work, or at your church, like anywhere, honestly, like if you just tell them about it, like they're gonna pass that information on to someone else that it comes up with someday. Like, just be real and be out there about it, I guess, because a lot of people try to hide it, which I understand, because they're either kind of embarrassed of it or they're not really sure how they feel about it. And I understand that, because there's been times where it's like, I don't really want to talk about it. Like, you go out and you just want to enjoy yourself, and then someone has 25 questions for you, and they're like, can you taste it? And all these ridiculous questions that we
That's
get.
the number one question.
I bet it is.
And, it's not dumb, because I guess if I didn't have a tube, I would probably ask the same thing, but
probably
it's just,
lots more too.
Oh yeah, I would be very interested, but it's like, you just be out there, I guess, about it. Like, don't be ashamed of it, and like tell people about it in little ways. Like, one of the things I thought that was really cool is when we have like some type of, like, I've actually been thinking about like how they're doing the ALS ice bucket challenge. Like, we should do some sort of challenge, like, and like I don't know, take a picture of your tube, or like have some sort of thing that's out there. That's why like the Tubie Tuesday thing was so cool, because I love that, because it was like, look at all these cool kids like with their tubes, like doing things, and it just like, it makes me so happy, especially when I see little kids. Like, when we were at Ollie, I saw so many little kids.
She met a little girl named Hannah, and typically at food conferences, I mean, at tube things, or feeding tube things, or Ollie, we don't meet people with food allergies.
No.
Ever, really. And so we met this little girl named Hannah. Her mom actually does, she makes the backpacks for the pumps.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is it called? Trendy tubies?
Trendy tubies.
Trendy tubies, I think.
Uh-huh.
So this little girl walks up, and the cool part is what her mom said is, watching Kendall and seeing Kendall in different things is what made me realize Hannah was going to be okay.
Yeah.
Hannah feel about her situation. Seeing that Kendall's made a life of herself, you know, for herself, and been okay. Hannah's a dancer, like
that's awesome
too. And so it just shows kids that it doesn't have to hold you back. I mean, there are going to be moments where it holds you back, but for the most part, you just keep going.
Don't let it stop you.
Yeah.
The biggest compliment ever too, because like that's like my goal is to just make that known to kids and to people everywhere who have tubes. Like it is different, but it's not going to stop you, and that's why I love meeting people who have it, because especially little kids who have it, because they just like it. For one time at a food allergy, I used to do food allergy walks for the cure, and back when it was FAN, which is the Food Allergy and Anaphylaxis Network, and we had these fan walks where people would come and like kind of, we did a walk-a-thon type thing and just raise money and awareness about food allergies. And this little boy came once and he talked to me, and he loved to play baseball, but
He was really sick.
He was really sick. He looked a lot like me when I was that age, failure to thrive, like not getting nutrition, and he was allergic, and I think he had EOE too.
No.
He didn't? Okay. So it was actually all food allergy, which is really cool because that's the same thing as me, but he was afraid of getting his tube, so he asked me, he's like, well, what does it feel like? They want me to get a tube, but like I'm really scared. Like, is it gonna, like, am I gonna be able to play baseball? Like, what do I do? And I like kind of, my mom like connected with his mom and talked to him a lot, and I talked to him a little bit, and it was so awesome because the next year at the walk, like here comes his team, and he has this giant team with him, and then he has his feeding tube already.
Awesome.
And he's like grown an inch, and he's like in his little baseball team with him, and
Yeah,
I was just like, that was like the best moment, because it just like, I started crying when I saw them, because like I just knowing that like something I said could help someone get through something, like that's also why I write music, is like if my music can like help someone get through a hard time, like that makes it worth it for me. Like it's not about being some famous person, it's just about like reaching people through whatever your talent is, whatever you love to do. Like,
Yeah, that's why we love what we do with Tubie Tuesday, videos like this, that are all video series that we're starting here, and we just want to be able to reach out and help folks out, and we just love getting reviews from customers who are saying it's changed their life in so many ways. And it's a real blessing. It really is. We're always looking. So if you ever bump into new tubies, we're always looking for new tubies that are out there doing something, and wouldn't mind getting in front of a webcam and doing this kind of a thing. Have a little Tubie Tuesday feature that we do. And always looking for more, because the more that's out there, the more we can share, the more people are gonna be comfortable, and the more awareness that we could raise. So
that's awesome.
Pass the word on, let them know we're looking for them.
Well, I will, definitely. Yeah. Definitely.
Right.
A couple of kids come to mind right now, actually.
Yeah, well, I actually, for Sammy's birthday present, the little zebra sample we had, the little Tubie cover that they gave me, I put it on her gift bag, because she had a zebra, and it, like, went perfectly. I'm like, oh, she's gonna like this.
Awesome.
I just see her, too, like, prancing around, like, look at mine, it's a zebra. It's so funny.
That's awesome. Alrighty, well, I appreciate all the time, and it's been nice seeing you face to face like this and talking with you. It's been awesome.
All right.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you, and we'll have to try to do another one again in the near future.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Hopefully sometime I can come to Tennessee, because I want to go there so bad, to Nashville, so bad. But
it'd be awesome. We'd love to have you out here. We live right in the middle between Nashville and Knoxville, so we're on the plateau. So I call it my own little piece of heaven right here. The weather's perfect, people are nice. I love it. So it's wonderful.
I love that. Like, for some reason, on that part of the United States, everyone is so friendly, and it's like, Southern California, everyone's so busy, and it's like, it was an adjustment for me as well too. Who's getting used to everything, but I love it. And I don't ever plan on leaving. So that's awesome.
Thank you so much for even letting Kendall do this. It's
awesome. Oh yeah, no, we're happy to do it, and we're again blessed to have you on here. And we appreciate it.
All right, well, have a great day.
All right, you too. You too. Take care. Bye.
What's your favorite tube cover, Smiley? Those are your favorite?
Yeah.
Why are they your favorite?
They're all puffy.